All right, we are going to make a value scale. For the value scale, you're going to need a B, a 2B, a 4B, and a 6B pencil so that we can go from light to dark. We're gonna make a 1 by 10 inch rectangle, and so let's start there. All right, so I'm gonna measure down. I've got my sketch pad horizontal. I'm gonna measure down from the top of my sketch pad 3 inches and make a 1 inch measurement. So I'm making dots between the 3 and the 4 inch. Now I'm gonna move my ruler over this direction and do the same thing again. Coming down to the 3 inch mark and making a dot between the 3 and the 4. Now I'm gonna line my ruler up with those dots so that I can draw a nice long straight line, and do it with my other set of dots as well. Okay, so now I have 2 long straight lines that are 1 inch apart from each other. Now I'm gonna measure over from the edge of my paper, the left side of my paper, and again, I'm just gonna go ahead and stay consistent here and make a mark at the 3 inch, and now I'm gonna come over 10 inches and make a mark at the 13 inch. Okay. We'll do that along the top line as well now. 2 sets of measurements to ensure accuracy. 1 dot at the 3 inch, 1 dot at the 13 inch. And now I'm gonna go ahead and make a line down through those areas. And what I should have here is a rectangle that between these 2 lines is 10 inches long. We want this to be a 10-step value scale. And so I'm gonna break this 10-inch long rectangle into 10 1-inch segments. So at every inch mark, I'm gonna make a hash. Each inch, I'm gonna make a hash mark. I'm doing that along my bottom line, and then I'm gonna do that along my top line as well. 2 sets of measurements to ensure accuracy. Now that I've done that, let's draw our lines to break our value scale into 1-inch segments. This is good practice for what we're going to do on the grid, on the portrait, on the photo rather, and on the drawing paper. Okay. Now that I've done that, let's mark our value scale so we know what's going to happen here. Way over here on the left, our first square is going to be white. Our last square is going to be black. And we should progressively move from white to black as we go from left to right. So to do this, I'm going to start with my B pencil. The B pencil is a light gray. I'm not going to put any gray in the first box. That's going to remain perfectly white. But I am going to lay down an even coat of gray all the way from the second box on through to my last box. This will take a little bit of time, a couple layers of graphite. You'll notice I'm not making my graphite darker as I get down towards the black. And it's not especially important that we stay perfectly inside of the lines of our rectangle. Okay, I'm holding the pencil very flat to the paper so only the side of the lead is touching, and I'm not pressing down hard at all. I'm just letting the pencil rub against the paper. Okay, that's all the B is going to do. Now we're going to come in with the 2B pencil. I'm going to start at the second square. And now, holding my pencil flat to the paper, again, I'm not pressing at all, but now I'm adding another layer of graphite on top here. And because the 2B pencil is softer, it makes a darker mark. So I'm building this up as I go. This is the same way we're going to shade your portraits, with multiple layers of graphite that are progressively softer and darker in order to create the darker values. We don't create darker values by pressing harder. Instead, we do it by using softer graphite. Our goal on this value scale is to make it so that if we were to blur our eyes, we'll progressively go from white to black. Okay, now I'm going to come back in with my 4B, and we're going to skip over to this 1, 2, 3, 4th square. Again, flat pencil to the paper, not pressing hard, not really pressing much at all, just layering graphite on top of the existing squares. You should notice that with these pencils, the softer the graphite, the smoother the pencil is on the paper. We're not smudging the graphite with our fingers or a paper towel or blending pencil, any of that. Instead, we're using graphite to blend these values together. Okay, now we're going to come in with the 6B. We have to be careful with the 6B because it gets dark very easily. So I'm going to start at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th square. Okay, pencil flat to the paper, building up these values. I don't know why I stopped before I got to that last one, but I'm going to go back in here and shade my last square. That was just a silly error on my part. Okay, so we'll get this shaded in with B, 2B, B. Okay, and now 6. We start with the white and work towards the black because we can always make our values darker, but it's hard to make them lighter. If we would have started with black and moved towards the white, it's hard to predict that we'll end at white, whereas it's much easier to predict that we can end at black. Now that we've got value laid down across this whole thing, I am going to start with my black square and my 6B pencil and start to build up this value a little more. So to make it darker, I'm pressing a little harder. I'm going to go at different angles here so that I'm filling the paper space in. Now we're talking about shaded black here, not like a black piece of construction paper or black paint. So it's not going to be the same solid black. That's a good indicator of black. Now we can move to our next square and make it a little bit darker than it was. Again, our goal here is to be able to see a smooth transition from square to square. We want to be careful not to make two squares too similar to each other. And yet we don't want big jumps in value from one square to another. Okay, so as I look, I've got a good transition going here from, let's mark these, from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. In those areas, let's cover this up. So in those first 4 squares, I see a nice smooth transition in values. Come over to our 5th square, and that's a nice value change as well. It looks like 5 and 6 are a little too similar to each other, so I think 6 needs to get a little darker. 7 then could stand to get a little darker, and I think progressively as we go, we'll need to get a little darker with each of these. Okay, so between 5 and 6 is where we need to work next. So 6B pencil, I'm gonna get my 6 to be a little darker. Key to this is observation. Can we observe what's happening in front of us? Okay, so 3, 4, 5, 6. Now 6 is actually a little darker than 7, and so I need to make 7 a little darker. So it's just darker than 6. Good. And now let's make 8 darker. Now, if we need to get darker and darker, okay, so 8's just a little darker than 7. The more dark we need to become, the more the tip of the pencil we're going to use, or the more vertically we're going to hold that pencil. Because now our 9 is going to get pretty much to be where our 10 is, and so our 10's going to have to get darker. The good news is we can still get darker with 10. Okay, so I've got a really nice smooth transition here, and then with 10, I'm going to use the tip of my pencil and build up a really glossy dark black. Okay, so there's a distinct difference between each of these. Let's give it our test again. So from 1 to 2 to 3, 4, 5, I'm seeing a good difference in each of those. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I like everything from 6 to 10. I think the jump from 5 to 6 is a bit dramatic right now. And so we're gonna take our 6 and just our 6B, and just very, very carefully add a little more value. So I'm using no pressure at all. I'm just allowing this pencil to rub over the surface of this 5 square to darken it slightly. So there's more difference between 4 and 5 and 5 and 6. And I see that now, just a little more. And that's how you create a value scale.